Usually things that are sinister, you don't communicate via email.
He's communicating with a class of people who think that they are above the law. They're vicious, psychopathic people.
The email claims that those people died because of rough sex. Based on what you've seen, it is possible that there's bodies right now buried at the Zorro Ranch.
I don't think it's beyond the pale that Epstein and Maxwell would kill someone, and if someone died, they definitely have them buried. From my research, you can clone a human up for about $1.5 million. Believe that a megalomaniac like Jeffrey Epstein, he felt that he was a superior human being. So it only makes sense that he would start cloning himself.
We've spoken about Epstein a few months ago. You've been on the show a couple of times. And that was before the 6 million files that just came out and the redactions that have been unredacted as well in the last few days. You've been covering this for so many years, Nick. What do you make of the latest drop?
I think it's kind of amazing in the respect that the information that we're getting, it cuts both ways. We're getting some pretty amazing information that I know about and other people know about, but the populace as a whole doesn't know about it. And I think that it's causing a lot of, I've been on some podcasts since the tranche of documents was released, and a lot of people are experiencing cognitive dissonance because some of the crimes that are talked about are just so horrific that Epstein has been heavily sanitized by the media and by the government. But the crimes that are alluded to in those emails are very horrific, or some of them anyway.
Let's go through some of these files. I'm going to open one here for the production team. It's under the torture section. And there's a few emails that reference torture. I'll go through 4 of them and I want to get your thoughts on them. So the first one here is between someone messaging Jeffrey. And he says, oh, that's the Sultan. That's the UAE Sultan that was unredacted later on. And the Sultan Jeffrey emails the Sultan saying, where are you? Are you okay? I loved the torture video. And then the Sultan replies, I am in China. I'll be in the US second week of May. So that's one. Number 2, we've got another one. And that was Harvard professor Martin Nowak with Epstein. And it's an email where Martin says, our spy was captured after completing her mission. And then Epstein replies, did you torture her? That's the second one. And then you got a third one here. So Epstein was talking with an Italian hedge fund partner, Tancredi Manciolo. So Epstein says, what would you like me to do with your friend? And then the Epstein then emails, do you want me to try to do her or just torture her? Now, that could be different context. It could be something more sexual. But these are 3 emails, some of them more sinister than others, that talk about torture. And I want to point out, I understand there's millions of emails that were released, but also the context of these emails. Did you enjoy the torture video? You don't have billionaires sending torture videos to each other. And the one with Nowak about, was our spy captured after completing her mission? Did you torture her? What do you make of these, considering the context, but also considering, Brian, that these are emails, and usually things that are sinister, you don't communicate via email. Like if I'm doing something that's illegal, I would never email another person about it. I'll just mention it in a call or in a disappearing message on WhatsApp. Or if it was an email, I'll dispose of it relatively quickly. What do you make of these emails referencing torture?
Well, it just so happens that I sent an email to Martin Nowak at Harvard. And I said, hi, Martin, my name is Nick Bryant, and I'm a New York City-based journalist. You wrote to Jeffrey Epstein, quote, our spy was captured after completing her mission, unquote. And Jeffrey Epstein replied, did you torture her? And I said, for my personal edification, and hopefully for the edification of law enforcement, I'd like to know if you were talking about torturing an adult or a minor. Best, Nick Bryant. With these type of emails, you've got to keep in mind that Jeffrey Epstein was above the law. And he's communicating with a class of people who think that they are above the law. And there are times when in those emails where Jeffrey Epstein says, well, we've got to save this for the telephone. But I think that, and a lot of the emails are coded with pizza and muffins and steaks and shrimp. But I think sometimes he just lets his guard down. We don't know for sure. I should say that. We don't know for sure. I mean, these are incriminating emails, but the government of the United States is ultimately going to have to have an investigation into these emails and determine who is a perpetrator and who's not. But those torture emails are somewhat ominous.
There's another email here I'm going to bring up. It's regarding the Zorro Ranch. And there's been a lot of talks about that ranch. There's an investigation by the state as well, finally, into the property that has a new owner right now. Because there's a lot of theories on what went on there. We know women were trafficked there. Some people are talking about potentially bodies buried. I'm going to read out an email here from Eddie Aragon. I'm sure you've seen it, Nick, but I'd love to get your thoughts on it. I'll read it out for the audience as well, and I've mentioned it in previous shows. But it's one of the more extreme ones. I read it, I'm like, no way, this is true, and I have to verify that it's actually true. So this is an email in 2019. So Edward emails Epstein's representative. No, sorry, someone, we don't know who. Someone that's the name is hidden, emails Edward, who works with Epstein. Edward, this is sensitive, so it will be the first and last email depending on your discretion. You can choose to take it or trash it, but this comes from a person that has been there and seen it all, as a former staff at the Zorro. The material below was taken from Jeffrey Epstein's home as my insurance in case of future litigation against Epstein. Sorry, no questions. What is damning about Epstein is yet to be written. Did you know somewhere in the hills outside the Zorro Ranch, Epstein's property in New Mexico, 2 foreign girls were buried on orders of Jeffrey and Madam G, which is likely Ghislaine Maxwell. Both died by strangulation during rough fetish sex. And then there's 7 attachments, likely evidence. When you're trying to extort someone, this looks like an extortion email. You'd want to offer evidence to say, look, I actually have that material. This is proof. And the attachments include one video, 14-minute video that says sex video with a minor. Another one says threesomes, a 27-minute video. Then a 13-minute video that says threesomes. A 19-minute video that says underage girl sex video. A 7.5-minute video that says underage girl Matthew Mellon video, which is a now dead billionaire, American billionaire. Number 6, underage girl rape fantasy video. And number 7, a 15-minute video, and that's a 23-minute video. It says rape fantasy with an underage girl. And number 7 is a 15-minute video that says girl from Bay Area, suicide attempt, confession to Madam Ghislaine Maxwell. Please arrange 1 Bitcoin by 6 p.m., which is about $9,000 at the time. Today, Thursday, September 2019, to the BTC wallet address that's also redacted. And then, I didn't read that part. The USB will be sent anonymously to your attention by overnight courier upon receipt of the funds. You have my assurance this is exclusive, never shared before, no attorneys, no samples, no questions, please confirm ASAP. So this is an extortion email, but it has very serious allegations and apparently 7 pieces of evidence to prove that this person has that material. There's also reports. There was a report that was someone contacted Fox News that apparently stole, I think it was a maid at Epstein's home that stole USBs that had underage sex in that footage, and that Fox News, I think, refused to see the footage because it has underage sex. What do you make of that email? Could we see such, like, these are pretty extraordinary claims? Could that be true?
I think I've been researching child trafficking and human trafficking for 23 years. And there's one common denominator that traffickers have, whether they've got a mansion on the Upper East Side or they're living in a trailer court in the Midwest. They're vicious, psychopathic people. Jeffrey Epstein did not have a conscience. And I don't think Ghislaine Maxwell has a conscience either. So we approach things like underage sex would be just anathema to us, or killing someone would be anathema to us. But these people are functioning on a much different level psychologically. They're functioning without a conscience. And also, they're functioning with the knowledge that whatever they do, they will get away with it, which are variables that can lead to indescribable evil. And we've seen pictures of or JPEGs of 9-year-olds, a 10-year-old, and an 11-year-old. So at this point, we definitely know that these girls were under 11 years old. And Virginia Giuffre had an affidavit that she said that the girls were as young as 12. And I've known for a number of years that these girls were, some of them were younger than 10. So with that, I don't have any problems believing. With Epstein and Maxwell killing someone, I mean, I don't think that that's beyond the pale.
So the claim here is that they did not kill someone. So according to the email, these people died because of rough sex. Now, I spoke to one of Epstein's victims. She said, based on her experience, there was a lot of rough sex, especially when Ghislaine is involved. She had a lot of sex toys that are on the rough fetish side. So she did not find that surprising. But the email claims that those people died because of rough sex, but they were not intentionally killed by Epstein or Ghislaine. But after they died during sex, during strangulation or whatever, they were buried afterwards. So might have been an accident, according to the email, the allegations.
That's entirely possible. But, you know, if you strangle someone and they're dead, I mean, you could certainly surmise that you killed them.
They've definitely been killed. So I'm saying we don't know if actually Ghislaine and Epstein killed them.
That's true.
The email claims that they buried them, but maybe it's a client of theirs, or maybe it's them. We don't know. So just saying what these allegations, and you're saying based on what you've seen, it is possible this is true. It is possible that there's bodies right now buried at the Zorro Ranch.
I see. The thing about this is, I try to approach everything agnostically, and then when enough information comes in, I make what I think is a decision. But we already know that Epstein and Maxwell, as I said before, are psychopaths. So the thing is, this information that we see, those videos, those are very incriminating videos. But would they go so far as to kill someone? And I don't know if that particular threat, blackmail letter, is entirely true, but I don't think it's beyond the pale that Epstein and Maxwell would kill someone through rough sex, and if someone died, they definitely have them buried, for sure.
I want to open another email here, and it's about, this is the first one, and this is about buying a baby. So this is an email from a redacted person, likely a victim, a detailed email where she's upset a few things about Epstein not fulfilling certain promises. And then near the end of the email, she says the following: "You made many unusual offers. You offered to buy a baby 6 months into our relationship, and 6 years later, you offered to support my next boyfriend. Do you remember that? It's probably not in my emails either, and I understand nobody would believe it." So first she says it's probably not in my emails either. So it shows that Epstein, and you see that throughout the files, Epstein tries to avoid, whenever someone sends something that could be incriminating, Epstein either never replies or replies with very limited, very short reply, because he tries to keep things outside of email. But the part where it says, "You offered to buy my baby," and when Epstein replied to that message, he ignored that particular point. He responded to her other points, complaining about things, about money, etc. But is there any other indications, or is there a possibility that Epstein was buying babies, and why would he?
There is another email about black market babies out of the ranch in New Mexico. So that is the second one. And actually, Virginia Giuffre, one of the things that really disillusioned her with Maxwell and Epstein is they wanted her to carry a baby.
Mm. Oh, I had another, by the way, there's another victim I interviewed. The interview is going out, probably went out just a few minutes ago, half an hour ago. And it was an interview with, I think her last name is O. Her first name is, there it is, Rena O. I interviewed her. You probably know her since you've been doing this for so long. And Rena said, and she said she's never disclosed it before. She told me on my interview that Epstein did ask her to have his baby as well. And he apparently asked many other women to have his baby. So I just wanted to kind of give you that context. She was going to disclose it in her book that's coming out, and she mentioned it in the interview 2 days ago. So Giuffre is not the only victim that makes that allegation, as you know.
And then there's also another document about that too. Epstein, I believe, I used to do science reporting, and in 1995, Dolly the sheep was cloned. It's very easy to clone anything you want to clone. You need an ovum. You take the DNA out of the ovum, you insert the DNA that you want into the ovum, and then you give it an electric charge, and that starts the mitosis process of the cell split. And when, even before I got into all this crazy stuff in 2002, 2003, in 1995, after Dolly the sheep was cloned, I thought to myself, there's got to be megalomaniac billionaires that are cloning themselves. And people in New York City, that's where I live, are actually cloning their French bulldogs because want they want another run with their bulldogs. And from my research, you can clone a human for about $1.5 million. So I believe that a megalomaniac like Jeffrey Epstein, I mean, he thought he wanted to seed the world with he felt that he was a superior human being above all other human beings or most other human beings. So it only makes sense that he would do that he would start cloning himself. I don't really have any problem believing that.
Holy shit! I'm looking at emails now, and but essentially, he's talking about this one. He's talking with Prince Andrew about human cloning, and Katie Couric was there as well. There's another file here as well in 2008. He was already starting to get obsessed with eugenics and genome obsession. So it goes back many, many years, and then there's talks about a baby factory plan at the Zorro Ranch. Have you? Can you? Because you mentioned it briefly now. What is that about?
Well, Juliet Bryant, have you interviewed her before?
I might have done a few months ago. She was on the panel with us. No, was she on our panel?
I no, she wasn't on the panel. No.
When we did a panel a few months ago, she wasn't there.
So yeah, no, she was there.
Okay, then I have not interviewed her.
She has said that she was at the Zorro Ranch.
The victim, sorry, yes, victim. I interviewed her last week. The victim, Julia Bryant.
Yeah.
Yes. I did interview her last week.
So she said that she was at Zorro Ranch and that she went unconscious, and then she came to. She was in like a gynecological stirrups, and there was a female doctor that was harvesting her ovums. That's what she believes. And that is now a story like that is sensational. But if you look at the context of who we're talking to and who we're talking about, I don't think it's beyond the pale.
That one was pretty. So I've interviewed Julia, Miss Roberts. I think it was Julia, and in my interview and one before that, she did also talk when she said that story. That story also shifted more recently to her to Epstein becoming a lizard, a reptilian, and also
Yes, she did say
her
that.
being abducted by aliens. So when she went down that path, and some people said that's due to shock, she kind of started imagining those things. But when she went down that path, it was a very different discussion with her than other victims. Was there other indications other than the interview with Miss Roberts, which I don't want to dismiss, but I'm telling you what made
Yeah,
it
no, I
a
get
bit
it.
more
I get it.
sensational? Was there other indicators you've seen in the files of anything to do with the baby factory? Because I haven't looked into that claim yet. I will over the next few days.
Well, what we're seeing is certainly eugenics. There is a email from, I think, Robert Trivers, uh, a noted biologist, and he's talking about giving hormone blockers to male babies and giving testosterone to female babies. And that's very shocking. I mean, what they're trying
Jesus
to
Christ.
do is produce essentially almost like a hermaphrodite. And both Epstein and Trivers find that this would be very sexy. What he says, a girl with male, basically a girl with male genitalia. And I think, to me, and I've looked at a lot of this stuff and I've seen a lot of evil, but the one that really, really got me was the baby, enhancing a baby's sucking ability. It was from Mark Tramo. He's an MD and a PhD, a neuroscientist at UCLA. And he's writing to Jeffrey Epstein on how to enhance a baby's sucking ability. That
I
one
saw that
got
one.
me.
Yes, that
Yeah,
was
that
that
one
was.
got me, man. Whoa. Now,
Let me go ahead.
if it was just Mark Tramo emailing like an obstetrician, you know, it wouldn't be so shocking. But he's emailing Jeffrey Epstein. That's what makes it very shocking. And I think it's one of the more evil emails that we've seen. And actually, he's stepping down from his position at UCLA. There's a lot of pressure put on him.
So
So there have been,
this is the one Mark Tramo says to Epstein: newborns should suck vigorously on a pacifier. That's the one, yeah.
yes.
What does he mean by that when he says newborns should suck vigorously on a pacifier?
Well, he talks about how to make newborns suck vigorously. And that's like the voice of the mother. Is that the email that you have?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and there's other talking about by the UCLA professor. He stepped down, as you said.
And that's very, I mean, why would someone send an email like that to Jeffrey Epstein?
There's another one here. Not sure if you've seen it, but that's one of those weird emails I could not really explain how he's getting access to that information, classified information. I think it was by the former Norwegian prime minister, and he sent him an email. This is classified. He literally says in the email, "This is classified information about polio." And if you can forward it to Bill Gates, there it is. And I want to ask you more questions about Bill Gates. How implicated do you think he is? Because some people are just, befriended a guy that turned out to be a horrific guy. Some made the mistake to befriend him even after the 2008 conviction. And others would have been involved in the crimes. And it's hard to differentiate between those three categories. But if you look at that email here, it's a 2015 email. And it was a Norwegian diplomat at the time, later became prime minister. He forwarded a confidential polio report from Pakistan directly to Epstein with the subject line, urgent, confi, which means confidential, please pass on to Bill Gates. Rod calls Epstein his best friend. And in the email, it clearly states it's confidential. And he asked him to send it to Bill Gates. And obviously Bill Gates has been linked to COVID, the origins of COVID, the warnings of COVID, profiting from COVID. Depends how far you want to go down that conspiracy path. And what do you make of an email like this? First, how did Epstein get the ability to be sent classified information? And number two, why? Why send polio information in Pakistan to Epstein classified to forward to Bill Gates?
That is a good question. We know that Epstein was tapped into a bunch of world leaders.
Yeah.
He's certainly the former prime minister of Norway. He was very good buddies with him.
Mm.
We know that, and he's taking heat right now for
He's
his
being
friendship.
investigated.
Yes, with that particular email, it's kind of difficult to discern what it's about. But I'll say a couple of things about Bill Gates. With Bill Gates and these other people, all you got to do is Google Jeffrey Epstein, and you can see that he's a convicted child molester, a registered child molester.
Everyone was talking about it. It was common knowledge at the time.
So let me ask you this: if you Googled someone, let's say you met John Doe, and you Googled him, and he was a registered sex offender, would you hang out with him?
Not only this, Nick, billionaires and politicians have a team that do due diligence on people before they meet them. Very common. When I meet certain people do due diligence on me. So they would know for sure, especially diplomats, that Epstein was a convicted. I think he was convicted of procuring prostitution of an underage, of a minor.
Yeah.
But the allegation, that's what he was convicted of. But the allegations were significantly more extensive.
Now, there is a 2001 article in the Evening Standard, the UK's Evening Standard, that really, it's one of the more honest articles about Jeffrey Epstein. And it says that Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Gates were doing business in the 1990s.
Wow.
And the cover story on Bill Gates is that he didn't meet Epstein until 2011. But I hearken back to this article, and I think that your audience would be very interested in the article. Epstein comes out and says that he's CIA in the article. So, I mean, he doesn't say it directly to the journalist, but he has said it to other people that
Nick,
he's CIA.
in a communication with Steve Bannon, like anyone refusing the fact or denying the fact that Epstein was intelligence has not really gone through the files. There's literally communication with Steve Bannon where Epstein says he's going into a SCIF. A SCIF is one of the most, protected, lockdown, classified meetings in the U.S. government, military, FBI, CIA. And for anyone, even foreign intelligence struggle to have access to a SCIF unless they're part of the 5 countries that work from an intelligence perspective. I can't remember something. So that's Australia, France, UK, Israel, the US. So if you're not part of one of these intelligence agencies, or you're not part of the US government, or have classified access, the Five Eyes has some sort of classified access, you cannot be part of a SCIF. And that was after the conviction in 2008. So there was no possible explanation for Epstein to have access to a SCIF in 2008, 2009. Take a step back though, Nick. I want to go through some of the emails to ask you a question on whether Epstein was just an evil man doing disgusting things and other people got caught up in it, or that was all intentional. That was an intelligence blackmail operation, kind of a honeypot-like operation. And if you go through the emails,
let me just say one thing about his CI connections. After he left Bear Stearns, a lot of people have surmised that he was dealing with BCCI. Bear Stearns was dealing with BCCI, which was a very dirty bank. It laundered money for drug dealers. It laundered money for the CIA. It laundered money for arms dealers. It was probably the dirtiest bank ever known to humanity. And after that, he went into business with a CIA asset named Stan Pottinger, who had been very high ranking in the Justice Department. But he was actually caught on tape putting together an arms deal for the Iranians when the Iranians were a combatant state to the US. And the prosecutor that was prosecuting him was Rudolph Giuliani, that paragon of integrity. And Rudolph Giuliani lost the tapes that incriminated Stan Pottinger in the illegal arms deal. And Epstein and Pottinger were in business together. They, according to the New York Times, which they came out with a very silly article that said Jeffrey Epstein wasn't a spy, but according to the New York Times, they were together selling tax avoidance strategies. But what they were really doing was they were doing arms profiteering.
Yeah, if you go back, the intelligence ties go back before the latest drop of Epstein files. It's pretty clear from me. There's just so many indicators from the beginning, from the first school that he started teaching in, and who William Barr's father bringing him into that school, and it goes on from there, from Bear Stearns to the arms dealers he worked with. The list goes on. That's a whole other discussion. Robert Maxwell's relationship as well with Ghislaine and his relations with his connections with intelligence. So I want to go through some of the emails, and I'll open the first one. And this is an exchange between Epstein and a victim or a woman. We don't know if she's a victim or not, how old she is. So Epstein emails are saying, now that I understand, try to take some nude photos. Be open, brave, sexy, wild, dance, jump, have fun, live. And then Epstein goes, I think you should take some of yourself first now. I want you to be free with yourself. I think you should study English. Go online. There are many places that can take TOEFL tests. The photos should be not porn, should be sexy. Do you watch porn? And then the girl replies, "I watch porno, of course. Okay, then I will be at home and I'll try to take some selfies also." So this is Epstein encouraging a girl to take photos and videos of her porno videos, or at least sexually explicit videos and photos. And then in another email there, this is a girl telling Epstein, I'm gonna bleep out some words. "I tried your back massage on a couple of guys at dinner yesterday. They all liked it a lot, and it's so easy. I think they all want to fuck me now." And she goes on, very explicit, very descriptive about different sexual moves she used on them, some things that worked, some things that didn't, what she didn't enjoy. And she's explaining it all to Epstein. She's like, "You're right. This worked, that worked. I tried this." And it literally read like what I'm interviewing a Russian spy, and the Russian spy was talking about sex. And that's the one I was talking about just now. Yeah. The Russian spy that I'm going to be interviewing in a few days. She talks about how she used sex as a weapon. That was her job. She was conducting honeypot operations, and the way she described sex and strategies is the same way that this girl was describing them to Jeffrey. And there's other examples here where someone sends to Epstein the following comment: "Girls are making money." Epstein says, "Bring a lot of toys." And the redacted name could be a victim says, "Yes, master." But so that redacted name could be either the victim or someone that is bringing other women for Epstein. So looking at all these, and I've got other examples as well, and that people can go through. We'll put them on screen in the post-production. Does it, to you, Nick, in all your research that you've done in the latest files, does it look like an operation that is a planned operation in order to entrap people and have material against them to blackmail them later on? Or do you think it was Epstein being sick in his devious world?
All his homes were wired for audiovisual blackmail. So we know that. His place in New York City, according to two victims, Epstein showed them a secret room, and there were men, as in plural, looking at the monitors. And the cameras showed all the bedrooms and all the bathrooms. I believe that it was definitely Jeffrey Epstein did a lot of things. He sold arms, he laundered money. He was a talented guy, but he was also a blackmailer, a honeypot. But here's the thing: some of the people that he blackmailed are the most powerful men in the world, and those guys have access to thugs. I mean, Les Wexner had access to the mafia, and also a guy like Ehud Barak, he certainly has access to his Israeli intelligence. But there's other people too that are very powerful, and there's no way that Jeffrey Epstein, as a high school, as a college dropout from a blue collar family in Coney Island, I mean, his dad was a gardener for the city of New York. There's no way that someone like that can blackmail the most powerful men in the world. He has to have an organization behind him that lets people know, if you touch Jeffrey Epstein, there's going to be retribution. That's the only way I believe that Jeffrey Epstein could blackmail people, and I definitely believe that he was blackmailing people.
Yeah, I'm looking at Les Wexner's statement. Les Wexner's statement, as expected. I'm not sure if you've seen it. It came out an hour ago. He said he trusted Epstein, gave him full control of his billions. So Wexner is one of the people that made Epstein so wealthy. He gave him power of attorney for his billions. Les Wexner is the founder of Victoria's Secret. He says that he had no clues of any criminal activities of Epstein. He hired Epstein because he trusted him, and based on recommendations by prominent financial figures. I wonder who that is. Who recommended Les Wexner? Hey, you should hire Epstein. And this is where people say the intelligence played a role. They convince people with Les Wexner's stature to hire Epstein, putting a word for him, influencing them, and that allowed Epstein to move up on the echelon so quickly. Les Wexner said he claims everything ended in 2007 when Epstein allegedly stole tens of millions from him. He said he never saw minors, never been on the plane, went to the island once, and claims Epstein ran a double life, one that is a well-connected financial advisor and another one as a criminal. And he just says, I'm innocent, didn't know about any of this, and I was naive and was tricked by Epstein. Hard to believe a billionaire of his stature, his capabilities, to just be tricked by someone who was very convincing and giving him power of attorney for billions. It's hard to believe that statement, but would love to get your thoughts on it, Nick.
Les Wexner is dirty. I mean, he's as dirty as Epstein. And he was part of the pedophilic enterprise of Jeffrey Epstein. And I don't have any problem saying that. There's been a lot of corroboration that he and Jeffrey Epstein had a very strange relationship. They were lovers, I believe, but then they were also pedophiles together. And though Les Wexner, I think, molested underage boys primarily, I believe that he also molested underage girls. And Epstein and Wexner together, there was a CIA proprietary airline called Southern Air Transport. And it was down in Florida, and they moved it to Columbus, Ohio, ostensibly to move product for Les Wexner's enterprise. But who knows exactly what they did. And Les Wexner, I wrote an article for the Sheer Post some years ago where I really got into Les Wexner's connections to organized crime. He was heavily plugged into the Genovese crime family. So Les Wexner is a very dirty guy. And to think that he was naive, Vanity Fair said, and I can't believe they said this, Vanity Fair said Les Wexner gave Jeffrey Epstein power of attorney over his vast fortune in 1991 because he was lonely. That's what Vanity Fair said. He was lonely.
I read that.
You can see how the media has covered for these guys. I mean, the government has covered for them because Les Wexner should be indicted and he should be in prison now. The media has covered for them and the government has covered for them. Yeah. And when we were talking about earlier with the emails, these guys have gotten away with so much that they think they're above the law.
Yeah. Who else, from all the names that are being name dropped, who else do you think should be investigated? A lot of people are talking about Reid Hoffman being very close and him and Elon having a spat, being very close to Epstein, where Reid sends a message to Jeffrey Epstein in 2014 after he was convicted, after Epstein was convicted, years afterwards. I'll then busy at 4 times a week. I'm going to start today trying for 7 days a week. Today's day 4 in a row, blah, blah, blah. Sent you 2 gifts to New York City address. 1, ice cream. If you have any interests, you should try. Else for the girls. Bizarre, a billionaire or a very wealthy person, I think Reid is a billionaire, sending ice cream to another very wealthy man. Maybe, I don't know. And the other one, something that may strike your funny bone for the island. Hope you're having fun as usual. Seeing Bill again with Santia. So that was Reid Hoffman in 2019. There's a lot more communication between Reid Hoffman, and I'm sure you know about it, between him and Epstein. Either that shows they were very close friends despite conviction of Epstein going to the island, etc. As far as I understand, Reid did go to the island. So was it just him being very close friends, making a mistake, staying close to someone that is a convicted pedophile? Or is there more to it for Reid Hoffman? And would love you to mention other names that I think you should be looked into further.
Well, I definitely believe that Reid Hoffman should be looked into. And also Howard Lutnick should also be looked into. And as we were talking about, Bill Gates should be looked into. I believe that if the government of the United States had the will to prosecute, we could definitely do that. We know who a bunch of the perpetrators are. We know who the procurers are. And there's a lot of victims out there that would be willing to testify if they felt safe. And like Sarah Kellen, Leslie Groff, Adriana Marcinkova, and Adriana Ross, they were procurers. We know that they were procurers, and the New York Times named them as procurers. And actually, one of Kellen's lawyers wrote a letter to the Department of Justice asking about Kellen cutting a deal, the Department of Justice cutting a deal with Kellen. So we could, if the United States had the will, they could impanel a grand jury next week. And they could indict Kellen, they could indict Groff, they could indict Marcinkova, they could indict a bunch of the procurers. And child trafficking is a heavy sentence in the United States in the federal system. It's 15 years to life. if you put them up on like 5 or 6 counts of child trafficking, they would roll over on the perps. And then we would definitely have the witnesses to come in to say, I was molested by this guy or I was molested by that guy. It's really, and we could have done this before this latest drop of documents. We could have done it. We could have done it 10 years ago. I mean, we know who a lot of these perps are. We knew who a bunch of the perps were 10 years ago before these documents dropped. I mean, there's some new revelations, but generally it's the usual suspects.
How about Alan Dershowitz? He's someone that he's very litigious, so a lot of people don't mention him. There was, from what I understand, one of the victims, maybe could have been Virginia Giuffre, that mentioned him as one of the perpetrators or co-conspirators, but then she redacted that statement. I'm not sure if it's Virginia. Do we have much
It was
understanding?
Virginia.
It was okay.
Virginia.
Do you know what was the reason why she redacted that statement? I'm not sure if you can. I haven't looked into it. And is there more allegations against Dershowitz?
There are allegations against Dershowitz. Sarah Ransom put in an affidavit that Epstein had told her to have a liaison with Alan Dershowitz. At that point, she was an adult. And then there was an affidavit by Maria Farmer that talked about Dershowitz going upstairs in Epstein's mansion where there were underage girls. With what Virginia waffled, there was pressure put on her. Virginia was honest. I knew her, and she was honest. And there was pressure put on her by one of her attorneys that to waffle on Alan Dershowitz. At least that's what another attorney who represented Virginia with something else told me.
That she was pressured. Sorry, she was pressured to withdraw the allegations or to make the allegations.
Pressed to withdraw the allegations.
I assume so.
By one of, according to an attorney that was also representing Virginia on a different matter, that's what he told me.
Well, Nick, I'm just going to go through essentially victims receiving images of dead bodies and threats along with those images. Some of them receiving threats in Hebrew. Now, I'm not sure if Hebrew is because it's Mossad or some Israeli group, or just using Hebrew because Mossad is scary. We don't know. But a lot of threats were being thrown at these victims, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of them. A lot of them have talked about them. And taking it a step further, Virginia Giuffre, among other victims that died due to mysterious circumstances, cause of death.
Actually, I don't think they were mysterious. I do think that she killed herself. You can go to nickbryantnyc.com. I wrote a pretty long blog about it. I knew Virginia, and I really wanted to set her death straight. So, I mean, I can get into the particulars.
So she did some from your investigation, because I've looked into it. Virginia did kill herself.
Yes.
Is there other victims that have? Some people are questioning the cause of death for other victims. We understand there's the bizarre cause of death for Epstein. I think that's unquestionable. An immense amount of red flags. Bizarre cause of death for the head of the modeling agency, Jean-Luc Brunel, who also died by suicide. There's that Wikipedia editor as well that was polishing Epstein's image. Recently, we found out that it was him that was found dead not long afterwards. But when it comes to victims, is there any victims that had a bizarre cause of death or not? Not that you've seen.
There was an attorney named Arthur Shapiro, and his law firm, he was in Columbus, Ohio. His law firm dealt with Wexner's The Limited. And it wasn't part of The Limited, but it represented The Limited. And Shapiro was the point man for dealing with The Limited. And he was shot execution style, 2 bullets to the back of the head in broad daylight in Columbus, Ohio. And there was a police report about it, and the police chief ordered it to be destroyed, but I've got a copy of it, and I think there's a copy of it floating around online. But Les Wexner was the prime suspect in that murder. as far as initiating that murder.
How was the lawyer involved? Was he looking into Les Wexner, representing one of the victims of Les Wexner, or unrelated?
No, he represented Les Wexner.
Oh wow!
And so his law firm worked with the Limited, Les Wexner's brand of,
And that particular lawyer in the law firm was directly involved with Les Wexner.
was the point man. Yes.
Oh
Yes.
wow! And why would anyone murder their own lawyer? Could it be that he discovered certain things? Obviously, we're speculating, but I'm just
Well,
curious.
I mean, attorneys have if someone's going to represent you, they're going to get a lot of information about whatever you're up to. And we don't know. Now, he was going to be called before a grand jury, but I think that grand jury was investigating something else. But whoever shot him in the back of the head, we just don't know. I mean, there are some other suspects other than Wexner too, but Wexner, according to this police report, is the main suspect. You could make an argument that there were some other people that wanted to kill him too, but Les Wexner is named in the police report, the homicide report.
I want to bring up another email for you, Nick, and that's a bizarre one that was going viral. So it's an email from. Let me see who it's from. I can't remember. I'm looking at the tweet. So it's an email. I can't remember who sent it, but it was sent to Ghislaine Maxwell. I don't know if the name is. Oh, it just says Ed, so we don't know who sent it. Ed something. And it says the title's Shadow Commission Invitation, and the email says, "Any interest in being on the Shadow Commission on 9/11? The membership list is secret." So that was Ed Epstein. Oh, that was journalist Ed Epstein sending it to Ghislaine Maxwell. So as far as I understand, Ed Epstein. What do you make of this email? Ed Epstein was a journalist investigating it, from what I understand, investigating the whole matter.
I have no idea what to make of that email.
You've seen it?
I've seen it. I really don't know what to make of it, though, to tell you the truth. I think we're going to need a little more information on that Shadow 9/11 Commission.
Yeah, there's another email that was sent a week after 9/11 that says, "Who was the pilot?" But that was taken out of context. It was part of a different discussion relating to a pilot of a helicopter. But people assume that this is linked to 9/11, and somehow Ghislaine Maxwell knows who the real pilot of 9/11 is. So Ed Epstein refers to Edward J. Epstein. He's an American investigative journalist and co-author of a book, best known for looking into it critiques Warren Commission's investigation of JFK. So he's someone that was looking into the Epstein case, and he sent this message to Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, Ghislaine declined the invitation. A lot of this email is going viral, people trying to make sense of it. I'm in, the same place as you. I don't know what to make of it. Just another one of those bizarre emails that are either taken out of context, or there is a more sinister context. A lot of emails are related to a call. You know when someone sends you an email and you just call them? So what we don't know is the calls that happen before or after many of those emails, which make it very hard to piece together. And the fact that there's another 6 million emails not released, and the fact that Channel 4 investigated and said, and I'm sure if you've looked into this, Nick, maybe you're the best person to ask about this. They said that out of these 12 million documents, everything that's been released so far, and the 6 million that remains, all of that is only 2% of the total files that the FBI has confiscated, according to what the FBI disclosed initially, the amount of data they have about when they confiscated all the material from Epstein. Channel 4 said there's only 2% that's been released so far. So there's a lot more that we don't even know about. Have you looked? Do you know anything about this?
Well, they released anywhere from 3 million to 3.5 million on January 30th. And there's supposed to be 3 more million that the Justice Department has. Although Pam Bondi came out the other day and said that we're done now. We're not going to release any more documents. But if you look at what's going on in those 3 million documents, and some of them are just dripping with evil and really show collusion by a lot of people, you can only imagine what's in the 3 million documents that the Department of Justice doesn't want to release. And actually, to tell you the truth, I'm amazed that the Trump administration released the documents that it did, because
Mm.
it really does show a very, very dark side of Jeffrey Epstein that I've known about for years, but other people have been slow to embrace that. And I didn't even know about some of this stuff, which.
Let, but let me tell you, Nick, what Channel 4 said. It said investigators originally estimated Epstein's seized data at 20 to 40 terabytes. Last year, they were still discussing 14.6 terabytes of archived material. They have so far released 300 gigabytes, which is about 2% of what they said they actually have. So that's according to Channel 4. So Channel 4 saying that all the material, the 3 and 3, 3 released, 3 not released, 3.5 released, 3 not released, all that material and what's been released so far is only 2% of what they actually have that they're not talking about anymore, based on the original estimates by investigators. So it gives us an idea that they could be, despite what we're seeing now, there could be a lot more on that. Moving away from the fact that I'm sure Epstein destroyed a lot of material when he knew he's being investigated, or a lot of material was hidden in other areas or by other people involved that the FBI was never able to seize. But it gives you an idea of how deep this actually goes.
Well, I think Epstein was certainly one of the most powerful men in the United States, and probably one of the more powerful men in the world. I mean, if you look at his connections, if you look at Dropsite News has come out with some really good articles about how he was selling arms with Ehud Barak.
Mm.
And he had the connections to get the prime minister of Norway, the former prime minister of Norway, the former prime minister of Australia, uh, Larry Summers, who also should be looked into, by the way, and a number of other power brokers. He was able to bring them all together, and that enabled Ehud Barak in Israel to sell armaments to Mongolia. And some of the other tricks that he pulled, it
He's
was
talking. He's talking about the Gaddafi as well. When Gaddafi was falling, he was talking about how to have access to the seas, tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions, in Libya at the time. So he was coming up talking with someone about a plan on how to be able to access that and become the go-to person for the billions that are sitting in Libya.
and there's an email between him and Ehud Barak, who is a nasty piece of work, a nasty piece of work. Virginia Giuffre talks about him in her book. She doesn't name his name, but she says that there's a prime minister that really was very, very rough on her.
Oh.
And I believe that that is Ehud Barak.
The last thing I want to show you, Nick, is just came out. That came out on, because you mentioned Dropsite News and you reminded me, Nick, that came out today. The Israeli government installed and maintained security system at Epstein apartment. Security equipment and alarms were installed by the Israeli government at notorious Manhattan residence frequented by Ehud Barak. The Israeli government installed security equipment and controlled access to a Manhattan apartment building managed by convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, according to a set of emails recently released by the Department of Justice. And it talks about the emails and the file numbers. So this is, just imagine this. What we could be seeing, maybe even below 2% of what exists, if the Israeli government installed the security systems, that means they would have access to all the material. If that was a blackmail operation by Epstein, supported by Mossad or other intelligence agencies, but in this one talking about Israeli intelligence, the Israeli intelligence could have significantly more information that's incriminating against multiple people, some we may not even know about. And potentially the information that Epstein has, which could have just been an asset, could just be some information that he collected for his own security in case he has a fallout with the intelligence agency like Robert Maxwell allegedly had, the father of Ghislaine Maxwell. So Epstein might be worried about Mossad coming after him, and he might have kept a very small portion of the material, which the FBI was able to seize a small portion of that, if that makes sense, as an insurance policy for him. But the crux of everything that went on in those residences and throughout those decades could be in the hands of intelligence, of Israeli intelligence or the CIA, and not Epstein himself.
I'm asked that question quite a bit. Was it Israeli intelligence or was it American intelligence?
Hmm.
And my answer is generally, I believe that Epstein was working with Israeli intelligence, and I also believe he was working with American intelligence.
Agree.
But it's American. I mean, and Israeli intelligence and American intelligence are like crime families. They're like the Genovese and Gambino crime family. They work together for the most part. Sometimes they don't, but for the most part, they work together. And I can't imagine American intelligence allowing Israeli intelligence to compromise American politicians on American soil without getting a cut of that intelligence.
Potentially,
So,
potentially.
and
But
I've
just
and I've talked with some CI people about it, and they agree with me.
but just remember, there's a lot of talk about Israel compromising U.S. politicians. We had Matt Gaetz and others, I think Marjorie Taylor Greene, that talked about how members of Congress visited Israel, and Matt Gaetz found from people could research it. I might not get my facts right, but he found someone in his hotel room that was going through his stuff, and a lot of members of Congress are under the assumption that they might be surveyed in Israel. So then you've got an intelligence agency surveying American politicians. If they're happy to survey American, and that's not only Israeli intelligence, other intelligence services as well, um, survey each other. But if they're happy to target American politicians, why wouldn't they target American billionaires? Now, you make a very valid point. If the Mossad has that information, the US would not okay it in their country if the CIA did not also have access to that information. So if they need to use it for any reason, they could use it as well as a blackmail tool.
And I can give you a rationale for that. When Epstein was busted, the Department of Justice, the Southern District for New York, Alexander Acosta was the U.S. attorney. They put together a 60-count indictment against Jeffrey Epstein. They did a lot of research, and count 51 was child trafficking, which would have, I mean, that 60-count indictment would have put Jeffrey Epstein away for the rest of his life. And then Alexander Acosta works out this sweetheart deal with Jeffrey Epstein, where he ends up doing 13 months in a county jail. Now, there's only two people in the country that can tell a U.S. attorney to stand down. One is the attorney general, and one is the president. And you've got to keep in mind that the Southern District of Florida had a 60-count indictment that they could have definitely hammered Epstein with. So the attorney general or the president told Alexander Acosta to stand down. And would the attorney general cover up a pedophile network unilaterally without an okay from his boss? I don't think so.
I agree.
So I believe that it was covered up by George Bush, the cognitively challenged George Bush, George Bush too. So that's where that cover up and emanated from, was at the very apex of American power. And that's another reason why I think Jeffrey Epstein was American intelligence as well as Israel intelligence.
I agree.
Is the American president going to quash an investigation into a guy who's an Israeli intelligence asset? I don't think so. I think it's probably improbable.
Agree. Well, Nick, it's always a pleasure to speak to you, and thank you for coming on the show again. Would love to do this again as we get more and more files. Not even get more files. Let's just get through the millions of files already out there, and we seeing the fallout, and more
And
people
I just
stepping
want to
down,
say
more people being
something to
investigated.
your audience. I started an organization called Epstein Justice, and please go to epsteinjustice.com. We need an investigation, and our politicians are not going to give us an investigation. We're going to have to put pressure on them. And what we want is an independent congressional commission. And independent congressional commissions include non-government personnel. And that's what we're going to need here. Independent congressional commission doesn't require a presidential signature. It just requires a majority in the House and the Senate. And I think that the independent congressional commission that we're lobbying for would have two objectives. We'd want to know why the government covered up child trafficking, and we'd want the perpetrators to be prosecuted. And we could do that too. I mean, as I said earlier, if the US government had the will to prosecute these perpetrators, we could start prosecuting them next week.
Well, thank you for what you're doing, Nick. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.